Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello and welcome to The People's View. This is Representative Carl Seidel along with Representative Pete Silva, and new Representative Merilinda Garcia will be our guest for today. Remember, this is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and we held our meetings every second Thursday at the Crown Plaza, and everybody is welcome to attend and hear our speakers. But right now we're going to talk to Representative Garcia, who's a third term.
Yes.
And you are co-chair of the House Republican Alliance. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the House Republican Alliance and what it does and how you've been involved with it.
Sure. So I'm a rep from Salem and Windham, and this is my third term. And in my first term, I became involved with the HRA, or the House Republican Alliance. And it's a great organization. It's a Republican caucus within the House where we review every piece of legislation as it appears on the calendar for the next week's House session. And then what we do is, through a process of vetting it and debating it and discussing it, we we basically try to make sure that it meets what we've promised to uphold in the Republican platform and the New Hampshire Constitution. So basically every House bill is vetted according to those two things, and then we offer a recommendation to the House on each bill and again how it is applied to the platform and the Constitution. So I think it's a useful tool in that as you go into a House session, first of all, there are many caucuses and types of groups that, like the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, the House Business Coalition, all of these groups that do offer recommendations on certain bills, but we're the only group that offers a recommendation on every single bill. So it's quite an undertaking, and that's why there are 3 co-chairs and then a fairly wide membership, and we all try to work together with committee liaisons and amongst each other to get it done when we have these large calendars. But overall, I think it's been a really good sort of gauge for how well we are upholding our promises as Republicans. And then again, as you mentioned, coming in as a freshman representative, it was a good group to just bond with colleagues of like mind and work to craft an agenda that we'd like to see accomplished throughout the session, and organize floor debates and really get into kind of the meat of the bills, and not just what we hear from the committee or from other reps.
Let's back up for a second though. One of the things that always interests me, anytime I see young people that are involved in politics, A, B, being a Republican, which is a huge thing, and then of course being a female, and you're also involved with the Hispanic Society. So all those things that don't add up if you look at some of the things you see on TV. So tell us how you got your start, and tell us how you became a Republican.
Sure. So that's one of those things. I think it's an unfortunate stereotype, if you will. It is true that, upon first meeting me, people may make assumptions. Oh, you're probably liberal, given, you're in the, 25 to 35 age bracket, and yes, you're female, educated, and Hispanic. And so I think that's unfortunate. As with any other stereotype, I frankly don't think it's right. And I think it's shifting. My road to conservatism, if you will, is really just basic. It has to do with the ideals that I think resonate with most people, that being personal responsibility and individual freedom and smaller government, and just all of these policies that help us to be the best we can be, because once you start to try to regulate and control things too much, what you end up doing is stifling creativity, innovation, and success for those who, want to pursue it. So you end up holding people back. So in terms of the Hispanic side of it, I have been involved with some national organizations and whatnot, and I think it's valuable. I mean, it's interesting when I meet other legislators that are Hispanic from other states and whatnot. Clearly in New Hampshire we have different issues we're dealing with in terms of the wider Hispanic and Latino community than those perhaps in Arizona or whatnot. But at the end of the day, the same things affect Hispanics that affect every other American and young people, in that, listen, we all need jobs, we all need a healthy economy, and then for the most part we share a lot of social values and whatnot, just through culture and whatnot, that we'd like to see made manifest in state and federal government. So, so when you try to divide out what are Hispanic issues, what are non-Hispanic issues, especially here in the Northeast, to me at least, it's just here I am as an individual, a New Hampshire citizen, a young person. I want to be able to be employed, and I want to be able to have a successful life in New Hampshire if I'd like. I don't want to have to go to another state, to pursue my dreams. So,
what was your big issue that got you started, though, to join the legislature, run for office?
Well, that's an interesting one. I didn't have a particular large issue, that was kind of burning in my heart and made me, rush to run for office. For me, it was more of a just type of civic responsibility, in that when I was of the age to vote, I was starting college and whatnot, so I was sure to do that. And then I was involved in my college Republicans, and then worked in politics purely on a volunteer basis. And so what ended up happening is when I finished college, I started working part-time and was looking to get involved in the '06 midterm elections. Again, just working or volunteering or something. So the thought had never crossed my mind to run for office myself. And then I ended up talking to someone that was involved in New Hampshire politics and had a better sense of, frankly, how our legislature works, which is quite, different from in other states, and just said to me, why don't you run yourself, instead of working on someone else's campaign. So again, the thought had never crossed my mind, but then I figured I know, the basics of campaigning, got a sense of my district, met some of my reps and whatnot, and figured, why not? This is, if I'm going to try and help and change things and, let my voice be heard, if you will, why not run? So I did, and I ended up winning, and now it's my third term, and
that's a good story. Now we get some people in Nashua to follow you along the same way.
She's like us. She came in a Democratic rush.
Yeah, actually, when I came in '06 was the first time the Democrats gained the majority since the Civil War, roughly. So.
No, that was the first time I ran and lost.
Okay.
But I got, I felt the same thing, that the state wasn't being run right, and that things had to change. But I got in the next time when you came along.
Now they're easy to beat.
But that's something, that's an interesting story, and you really like it now, I assume, because you've been in everything. You've been doing a lot of things up there.
Yeah, I do. I mean, again, I think our state is wonderful because it does allow so much citizen participation. To be honest, if I thought I had to raise, $500,000 for my first campaign, back when I finished college, I likely would have found that a very daunting prospect, would have been reticent to try. But, with that, and then just because we have such high turnover in the House too, I think once you establish yourself and start to gain responsibilities and whatnot, you find that you can be involved in a lot more policy initiatives and, projects and all of this in your community and in the state. And frankly, it's very intellectually stimulating, and it's a way to be able to, serve, do public service, and make a difference in many people's lives that a lot of people, an opportunity that a lot of people don't have until very later in their career. Of course, given as we're part-time and we can't live on our service, if you will, it is hard to, find other things to occupy my time and move my career along with. So I just assess things every 2 years and see what's happening in my
Do you
life.
see a political as a career, or are you just doing this for here?
I think as a conservative Republican, I of course have that little struggle with not wanting to be a career politician, you know, because I think we all understand what the pitfalls of that can be. At the same time, obviously, if it didn't interest me, I wouldn't remain in it. But I honestly don't have a specific long-term political ambition. You know, again, I think I understand the possibilities and, you know, ways I could do that, but I don't really have a clear trajectory right now.
Right now, you don't have any interference with the career, I mean, as far as anything else is concerned?
Well,
You know,
I do in that, again, a lot of people work for a long
Right.
time and then
Jump
decide,
in.
okay, now I'm going to get into public service and run for office, all of this. I've clearly gone at about it completely backwards. So, so I don't have too many people that I can, you know, kind of relate to, or, you know, there are wonderful people that provide wonderful advice and whatnot, but there aren't too many people that I can sort of follow or, you know, try to emulate, I guess, in terms of a career path. But
You now have interaction with the national group, and how does that affect what you do here or what you can do nationally?
well, yeah, the national organizations, this particular one, the National Conference of Hispanic Elected Officials, I think it's called, these acronyms.
Sometimes they get
National,
kind of long.
yeah. Yeah, I think I confused that one. But in any case, it's good. I've been appointed to the Business and Economic
Right.
Development Task Force, which again, I appreciate. I like that they're looking at it as, again, you know, why do we sort of focus inwardly on, say, the Hispanic or Latino problems?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do we say, oh, well, this is where we struggle, you know, let's try to fix this through government and whatnot. What they try to do, and another organization called the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, they work on promoting successful, you know, Latino successful students, promising students and whatnot, and helping them develop careers so that we don't have to have this stereotype, you know, of Hispanics and Latinos as being, you know, underperforming or, you know, all of these, frankly, somewhat negative stereotypes. So I appreciate anything I can do to help change that. I'm happy if just by mere participation that helps, then I'm happy to do that. But then also we are looking at just actual ways, you know, there are all kinds of corporate entities, private businesses and whatnot with Hispanics in very, very, you know, high-powered leadership roles and doing all sorts of amazing things. So it's great for kind of networking, getting to know people, getting to know the community and the national landscape, but also to, you know, help us meet each other and help other Latinos understand that they have people to look up to, you know, and don't have to fall into a stereotype.
The funny thing is, I lived back in the early 80s. It was during Merrill Island, the whole thing, down in Fort Lauderdale, so I had relatives in Miami. And the Cuban population, they're all Republicans.
Yeah.
All Republicans.
Yeah.
Well, look at Rubio.
Yep.
But they really are. And you would
Yeah.
never, stereotypically, people wouldn't think that, but they're very conservative.
Right. Well, it's so diverse. I mean, it really is. Between the, you know, Cubans that tend to be in the, obviously, Florida area, then, you know, Texas, LA, California in general. It's a very, very diverse group. You know, I'm sorry, Hispanic and Latino is a very large, you know, umbrella term and whatnot. And then depending what generation, you know, you are, you know, my father is the Hispanic side, my mother is Italian, and you know, my dad's family's been here for generations. So clearly, I don't have the same story as, you know, someone whose parents, you know, came from Mexico or whatnot, and, you know, English, Spanish is their first language, all of this kind of thing. So, but at the end of the day, my last name is Garcia. I am of, you know, Latino, you know, background and whatnot, and I'm proud of that, and I hope to be able to do positive things for them.
Well, there's a lot of common problems.
Yes,
You're just
exactly.
trying to help out. I mean, it goes across the spectrum. You don't have to, I hate people categorizing,
Right.
putting them in slots and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
And I think people have to learn from that.
Well, it takes people like yourself to bring it up,
That's
so
right.
to change the stereotypical things that when they see. Last night we have a relative of my wife's from her cousin's side that from Fall River, and so we just started talking politics, and she's 80, so who are you going to vote for? And she says Obama or something. She didn't even say it right, so it's Polish descent. So of course I get into it, So why are you going to vote for Obama? Well, because he's a Democrat. And that's really the biggest stereotypical thing of all of it, because he's a Democrat. I couldn't vote for Republican.
Right.
So I do the classic, so if Hitler was a Democrat, would you vote for Hitler? Well, was Hitler a Democrat?
Right.
I mean, it's that, it could be that ridiculous that they
Right.
just don't look at anything. It doesn't matter what they are for a party.
Exactly.
But
It's true.
now, when you first got into the HRA, how many people were there in the room?
There were many people.
Were
It
there?
was very crowded. Yeah, actually, we would use the committee room and have, all of these chairs lined up, and generally people would kind of stand around the perimeter. It's changed a bit now because most of the HRA has moved into leadership, and so, frankly, there are only so many hours that for possible meeting times that are available during the week. So we have an
Lots of
unfortunate
conflicts,
one.
yeah,
It's really
lots of
early.
conflicts.
Yeah, but it's just people are quite busy. So our membership has changed a little bit, but it's been good. We've taken in a lot of freshmen, which I think is always helpful. And then we do have some great chairmen and whatnot, like Rep. Baldessaro from Londonderry is always sure to come by. I really appreciate that, because it's nice to have some perspective and institutional knowledge. And sometimes you just need to put on the brakes a little bit and just, say, that's great, but this is reality.
You learn about the unintended consequences.
Yeah, things like that. So process stuff.
Well, we had a quick interview. I know you're pressed for time, but you'll have to come back when you can spend more time.
I would love to.
And just Carl and
Did
I
you?
love doing the show.
Oh, yeah.
so-
We'll have you back as soon as you
Great.
can. You had some law, though, that you wanted to speak about, and I don't know if you have a few seconds. You want to make some comments on
Well, this coming
proposed
Wednesday, I do have a piece of legislation coming up that the long-term goal of it is, frankly, just that, looking at our state, where we are geographically, and what we're doing with our economy long-term, I think we need to be thinking, how is our economy going to be sustainable, long-term? And in an area with such intellectual capital and so many resources and sort of movability and whatnot, we have an issue where younger people may come here to be educated, grow up here, but then they tend to leave, when they need to find a job in certain industries. So it seems to me that the innovation economy, what with today's global economy and technology and whatnot, and then the high-tech industry are very important ones to focus on and be sure to, be open to and welcoming to. And the other one is healthcare, which is changing, so rapidly, but obviously is extremely important, will always be, and will always be with us in some form or another. So my bill is related to the specialization industry, and it just basically is there to allow for the specialty sector, and specifically the destination specialty treatment center, basically to be able to come into the state and do their work. They're leading the edge in innovation and very high quality care. And so we found out that we have a particular regulatory process through our certificate of need law that stifles that type of creativity and forward movement in healthcare development. So my bill basically tries to open that regulatory process and allow for this sector to develop.
Good. We wish you success, and you
Well,
come
thank
back
you.
and talk us about
Thank
it.
you. I know you're both going to vote for it, so I'm happy.
Okay, thank you.
We're all set on that one.
It's good.
And thank all of
All
you
right.
for listening in.
Okay.
And come back and listen to some more shows every week. We have these People's View. Thank you.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The People's View. Alongside, as always, Carl Seidel and another fellow state representative, freshman this year, Don Lebrun. And I don't know if he can blame us for getting him involved or not. It depends on how you look at it.
No, I don't put the blame on anybody. What I do for myself.
But he's one of the softball six.
Yeah, in fact, I played a doubleheader this morning. And we won a doubleheader, Carl.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Very good.
First time this year we've won 2 games in a row.
We play indoors now in
Yeah.
the winter, and in the summer I noticed they've put out an announcement that they're looking for new players for this summer's league.
Well, we have 104 signed up.
Really? Good.
Yeah, so it looks like we're going to have 8 teams this year.
Ah,
What's
So
the
things
age,
are looking
what's
good.
the age requirement on that?
Age requirement is 60 and over.
I
And at the
always
present
tell
time, I'm the second oldest person in the league. Maybe the first. I don't know if the oldest one will be back.
oh, really?
So it's possible, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Al's not
One
doing
of my
well.
favorite stories, my father-in-law was in one of those leagues, and we're down in Florida. It was off-season, so they weren't even, like, there's no umpires, there's no uniforms, just their
Yeah.
team, like, having a scrimmage.
Yeah.
So he asked if I could play, and I was, like, probably 40 at the time. And they said, yeah, you know, some weren't even happy about me playing, but, you know, just to have fun. So I'm in the outfield with this other guy, and the guy was, I think he was 78. He didn't look 60.
My age.
And he didn't do that, though, did he?
I hope that'll be cut out.
I didn't mean, maybe the guy's gone. And
The spirit came back to haunt you.
so they even had like a crushed soda box or beer box or something as home plate.
Oh,
And they put it to the side so that if you were running in, you wouldn't, you know, run into
Yeah,
each
well,
other.
we do that, but we don't use a box.
But, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It was like
Yeah.
totally pre-season.
Right.
Yeah, we have a little more money than that.
Well, but they hadn't even started yet. So there's an argument at the plate,
Ah.
who was out or who was safe. And these guys are going at it. So I said to the guy I'm standing in the outfield with, I said, you know, I just thought after a while you'd like grow out of that stuff. And he looks at me and says, kid, being big, he said, let me tell you something. From the time you're 12 years old, you are who you are, and you don't change.
And he's right, he's right. Your character's formed by then.
So, Don, tell us of your experience so far. How has it been in the house, and what do you think, and was it what you thought it would be?
Well, you know, I got involved in running this year, or last year, because I thought there were so many things that I could do mainly to help Nashua. But not only to help Nashua, but to represent all the people of New Hampshire. Because that's, you know, I don't look at things as, will it help Nashua all the time? I look at what it's going to do for the state overall. And that's the kind of things I try to promote. I'm not a strict party man. I go along with the party for the most part because obviously I am Republican. But I try to look at things from both sides. And I have a lot of Democratic friends who have a lot of good ideas. And that's the way I try to incorporate things. Everything I do, I try to incorporate the ideas of the opposite side in with mine and see if I can come up with a happy medium. I try not to be biased. And one thing that I have found this year and last year is I feel there is a lot of bias. I feel that some people look at things through tunnel vision, and everything they do is based on party. It's got to be party, whether it's a good idea or not, or whether it's a frivolous idea. Like some of the things we had yesterday that were so totally frivolous, getting late in the day, we had no business wasting all that time on them. We should have thrown them out and gone on to the more important things and had the debate on the more important things. And we didn't do that. And that frustrates me.
Well, that's the process. You can't, unfortunately, you can't throw them out.
No, you can't throw them out. You're right. But some things are just so totally frivolous that they should never even come to us to start with. They should have been taken care of in committee.
Well, that's been an issue the whole year.
well, I think, Don, you also see that how many things have been pulled off consent this year.
Yeah.
Because people don't agree with the committees.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure whether that's the committee's fault or the person's fault, but I think the way the votes go, it's mostly the person's fault who has a very narrow aspect of this one bill, and he wants to make sure people hear it.
Yeah.
I think
Everybody wants to see their bills move through, sent on to the Senate, and ultimately become law. It's a nice feeling for the governor to call you and say, hey, we're going to have a signing on your bill. We'd like you to be there. And I've done that. And that's a good feeling. But nevertheless, you've got to scrutinize what you're proposing. Before it ever gets to committee, you've got to sit down and think to yourself, now, is this something that we really need? Is it something that's really going to help people? Or is it something that is just going to make me feel good?
The problem is, I think that I can't think of any other type of business, you know, we all come from business backgrounds one way or another, that you could be in that you could have the awesome responsibility you're given as a legislator without any training.
It is an awesome responsibility.
You go into this thing where you have 1.5 million people's hands in your hand, or souls in your hand that you're in charge of, or you're helping to make
Responsible
laws.
to.
You're responsible to.
Yes.
And there's no training. So when you come in, Carl and I have talked about this several times, forget us, go to the Senate. I think you should have to spend a term in the House before you can be a senator. Because now there's only 24 of them.
Right.
At least you can hide a little bit in the House with 400 of us. But I think one of the things you saw this particular term, and Carl and I didn't think so last term, because we were tired of getting beat up by being in the minority, but it was a good learning experience for us. You just got the, no matter what you did, you're not going to pass anything anyway.
Yeah.
So you just sat there and you learned. So hopefully when you got in the majority, you could do something with it. And I can't be happy enough. I always think about how lucky I am that did happen as it turned out. We had this, to top all that, we had this huge influx of libertarians and free staters that have an attitude that 100% or zero.
Yeah.
There's no
Absolutely.
compromise. They don't care about embarrassing themselves or the party.
You're right.
Or their constituents.
You're right.
They do come from towns.
Yeah.
They do represent. You know, they'll say that nut from wherever. You know, so but they don't care. And when you have that attitude, along with that comes some damage.
But obviously they come from towns that support that sort of feeling.
I don't believe that.
You don't think so?
Well, because some of them come from towns that I border.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of people from
nevertheless,
them.
they got elected. So the majority of,
But what
the
they
people
did is they didn't campaign like that. They campaigned as Republicans.
that I can't speak for. I only know how I campaigned.
Well, you know how you can use
I campaigned on truth and honesty.
You campaigned though. You were
Yes,
out there.
I did.
People knew who you were.
Yes, I did.
But look at your district you came from, which is mine. We had 2 people in that district. One of them pulled himself out of the race, but he couldn't get his name off the ballot and got elected.
Yes.
So he didn't get elected for his policy. He got elected because he had an R after his name. And that's kind of what happened this last time. So
That's right.
that being the case, I would say some of the real bomb throwers, if they knocked on the doors and said exactly what they were, they may not have gotten, they may still have gotten elected because it was better than the alternative in some people's eyes. But we had one, I won't mention his name, but that ran in a very French-Canadian neighborhood here in Nashua and had on the literature that he was wants to legalize marijuana. Well, you get some of these old conservative French-Canadians, that probably cost him the election. Just that one simple thing because he put it out there.
Yeah. We've had a lot of bills in this year based on drugs of one kind or another. Probably too many. But let's talk about something that's very near and dear to me, and that's health care. I'm on Health and Human Services, and I just want everybody out there listening and watching this to know that there is no way that I will ever do anything whatsoever to cut the people who need health care the most. Those people, the most vulnerable people that cannot help themselves, will never, ever hear me speak against them. Those people, to me, are the most important people in this state. They cannot help themselves. They need everything we can give them, and I'm there to see that they get it. And whether I win or lose, I will be their champion.
Okay. What does that mean, though, exactly as far as particular legislation? Can you talk about any particular legislation that's coming up or has come up?
I can speak
As an
about
example?
some legislation from last year, some of the cuts that we made that I did not agree with, to do with places like Gateway and the Plus Company, and those people that, in my opinion, need everybody's help. anything we can do for them, they deserve it, because they cannot do for themselves. Now, as you move up and you get people who can do for themselves, but utilize the system and would rather not help themselves, that's a different story. I will cut those people and take away from them in order to give to the most vulnerable.
How do you determine the difference?
How do I determine the difference? If I see people who are utilizing the system, let's just say the welfare system. I see people utilizing the welfare system that obviously would rather not work than to go out and help themselves any. They just simply will not take the responsibility for their own life. That's the people that I try to single out and say, okay, there's where we have to do the cuts. We had testimony in HHS that stated from the people who run the welfare system that they know of 8.5% fraud in the welfare system. Now, they also testified there's 110,000 people in New Hampshire on welfare. That's basically 10,000 people that they're claiming they know are some way or another fraudulently accepting welfare. But they're not doing anything about it. They're not trying to weed them out.
What was their reason for not doing that?
The reason that I was given, we don't want to go there. We don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific in your committee? Because I've been on judiciary. We see parts of welfare fraud, things like that, that we deal with in different types of bills, but not as direct as you. Were there any specific plans? Because if you remember, we were all part of a bill to try to get drug testing for welfare recipients, which got shot down.
That was my bill. That was HB 484.
You know, as you remember, I was on that too, part of it. But you guys came up with it, and I thought it was great. You see other states have followed it, but it got killed.
It got killed. It got killed in committee. It never made it out of committee.
And what was the main reason for that, Don?
As the people from the welfare department stated in their testimony, they just simply either did not have time or really were not interested in looking into it. They identified the 8.5% that they feel are fraudulent, but that was okay with them. 8.5% wasn't bad. Well, to me, 0.5% is bad.
Did they give a comparison in other states with that 8.5%? Is that common, or is that low? Is it high?
No, what usually happens, according to their testimony, is when you identify the fraudulent recipients, they usually just move on to another state. So that fluctuates.
Oh, you mean they've identified them and told them you're fraudulent?
Well, they prove they're
scared.
fraudulent, and they just up and move to another state where they can get what they want. They're
That's
people
their
who,
method of
they are
handling it.
career welfare recipients. That's exactly what they are.
Isn't it? Somebody told me once, and I wanted, because you'd know. Is it true that we have less stringent rules in New Hampshire when it comes to welfare recipients than Massachusetts? Less tracking ability, I guess is the way to say it.
I would think, well, I don't know about less tracking ability. It may be that Massachusetts tracks theirs, and we choose not to.
We don't do it at all, right?
We don't do it at all.
See, that I heard that before, and
Yeah.
that's really true.
That was the testimony we were given.
You know, one thing bothered me about I tried to listen to a couple of your committee's hearings before you joined. This was 2 years ago. And I heard that they had an audit report. I was listening in, and the response of the assistant director for HHS is, we don't have the personnel to list it. They had 30-some recommendations to implement any of those recommendations. And is that still their response? Is that the fact that you can't get them?
Basically, yes. But if you would weed out those 8.5%,
Yeah.
you would have the money to hire the proper staff to do the job properly. I mean, at 8.5% and 10,000 people, if it basically $5,000 or $500 a month, say, okay, that's $60,000 or $6,000 a year, okay, per individual. 10,000.
That's $6 million.
That's $6 million. So, you know, how much staff do you need? How much can you hire for $6 million?
Yeah.
Now, are there models that we can copy to how to monitor this that we could, you know, is there a bill in place? Is there something that people are going to try to do something that we can go after this?
If I'm fortunate enough to get reelected next year, it's too late this year, but if I'm fortunate enough to get reelected next year, and I hope everyone understands that I am running and I would appreciate your vote. If I'm fortunate enough to get elected, the people who are not on welfare and who are willing to make their own way and take responsibility can expect me to be the biggest mouth in Concord.
Okay.
I will be their champion.
We'll make sure that they know you're in Ward 5.
That's
And you
right.
only
With
have to work
redistricting, I'm in Ward 5, not 5, 8, and 9 next year. Or
Well,
this year.
who knows?
Well, we don't really know that for sure yet, but it looks that way. So that's what I basically have to say to my
There's a story a friend of mine
constituents.
told me, and I don't have any reason to doubt him, but it's before my time. It was back in the 70s in this state anyway. But I guess Governor Merle used to individually interview people that went on welfare. And then people who were unemployed.
Really?
Yeah. So he'd take them in the office and he'd ask them what they were doing to improve it. And he would decide if he got it or not.
Well, my bill would have had a training period. We would not have taken people off the rolls just immediately. We would have had a work period where a person can collect welfare to a certain point. In the meantime, they're training for a job. When that period of time ran out, they had to get off the welfare rolls and get a job. They were trained. They could not any longer say they don't have any skills of any kind. They would be trained in a job and they would go out into the workforce. And there are jobs available. For anybody to say there are no jobs, there are jobs. People just have to be willing to do the job that's out there.
But then they go, I have to actually follow up on this, but I had a constituent call me. It's a couple of months ago now, and I turned it over to the Labor Department. I got to follow up on it. He's a kid, and he was working at one of the high-tech companies, little company, went out of business. So he was there for about a year. So he's on his way to Chicago, and he called me to see if I could help him, and this is what they did to him. He got a part-time job, it was around the holidays, at one of the stores in the mall, making $7.60 an hour, I think he said. Well, he didn't realize that when you did that, that stops you from collecting. So he ended up getting a fine. And initially they wanted something, let's just say $1,500 is what they wanted back from him that they had paid him. So he fought it. And by fighting it, they went back for all they had paid him. So it was like, well, they went over $5,000. So his point to me was, here's a guy that's trying to just do better, rather than sitting home on his duff. He went out and got a job for that. He got penalized. And now the state's suing him for like $6,500 to get back every penny they paid him because he went and got a part-time job instead of just staying home. So there's so many things we got to change with it because that is so wrong in every way.
That is wrong. And a work program, that couldn't have happened with a work program because while you're in the work program, you can go ahead and make money. And they take that into consideration. But you're in that training program to go out and get off of welfare. So you're not skimming off the top or double dipping or anything like that. You move yourself into a position where you can provide for your family. And, you know, basically that's the thing. Too many people nowadays don't want to provide for their family. They want somebody else to do it.
That's right.
We do not owe people a lifestyle. We owe them an existence. That's all we owe. Beyond that, it's up to them to take care of themselves. And that's what we've got to get back to. That's the old America, when you were proud to go out and work, regardless if you were digging ditches or what you were doing. You were proud to go out and do that and support your family. You were responsible.
But you were bringing home the money.
That's right.
But in a little broader sense, does your committee oversee, or that agency have several thousand contracts out there with different NCOs. How do we gauge the effectiveness of those NCOs? When I asked that question 2 years ago, I couldn't get an answer. There was no, this is your objective, how did you meet the objective? If you didn't meet it, what are you going to do to meet it next time?
Before you do that, explain what an NCO is for our audience.
NCOs are a lot of things.
Be nice.
No, but basically, what we're talking about is somebody to oversee.
NGOs, I meant to say, those non-government organizations.
Yeah, and what we need is someone to oversee that all of those organizations are running according to the guidelines they're supposed to be responsible for. And we need, instead of 9 separate departments all taking care of themselves and not basically reporting to anybody, we need some oversight to monitor all 9 of them and see that all of them are doing their job. And that those millions that we just saved, we can pay somebody a decent wage to do that. So it's all about checks and balances.
I think we should encourage some of them for joining together so you can get rid of some of the administrative overhead.
Yeah.
That's a large cost, too.
Yeah.
And then you'd be able to service more people.
Be able to service more people, yes.
Which is your objective.
Yes. To be able to service more people in the proper way.
Right.
In the way that the system is designed to be utilized. Not just willy-nilly and anybody walks in the door, give them a check. And I honestly believe that in saying this, that my constituents overall will be more likely to listen to what I'm saying about that than for me to say, well, anybody that wants to get welfare, just turn your back. Just turn your back on them. I think my constituents would be on my side in this debate and say that, yes, they approve of this.
The thing that worries me
Don't forget
the
to
most,
vote for me in November.
I just wonder, there's so many people that buy into it's not so much what you're going to do for them, it's what you're going to give them. There's a lot of people now that just really, and the funny thing is they rarely get much, but they really think they're getting something. You know, you heard of the whole last election.
Yeah. And that's another part of the problem, is possibly we give too much. Because if you continually give people enough to make their way, they're going to be happy with that and just keep taking it.
Well, I don't know if I told you this story. I know I didn't tell you, Don, but I used to be a member at Sky Meadow, and I haven't done it in a few years now. It just got too expensive with college and everything. But so I just kept playing more of the local clubs, and there's this little, 9-holer in Tingsboro Country Club, and it's a pit, but you can get out on it anytime you want, and it's reasonably priced and all that. So I met this guy, and he's there every day. You could join a membership there. It's $1,000, and you play all you want for the whole season. So I met him this one year, and we started talking. He's out of work, and he was in his early 60s, but not retirement age. So I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but if he gets there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and his curfew is 5:30 to be home for his wife for dinner, when are you looking for a job? I'm just thinking this to myself, and I like playing golf with him because he's a good golfer. He's a really good challenge.
But he should have been out looking for a job.
You would think. So he started complaining about that's when the whole benefit was going to run out. Remember the 99 weeks or whatever it was? And he's complaining, because he was a veteran. We'll have a soft spot for veterans anyways. And I kind of let it go. So then another year goes by. So it's the first time I see him in the spring, and I play with him, and the same type of thing. So the second time I'm with him, and he says, "Oh, I got my Obama stimulus package." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he lives here in Nashua, by the way. He said, "Well, yeah, I just got my stimulus." I said, "What are you talking about?" I thought he meant the unemployment. He just got all of his windows replaced. He got his insulation replaced and a brand new furnace. And so I'm thinking that he's pulling my leg.
No, not at all.
So, and I said, "How did you get that?" And he says, "Well, When you're on fuel assistance, then you qualify, and so that's 10 grand anyway, right? For 5,000, it's gonna be 5 grand for a furnace.
Sure.
Windows and insulation. Here's a guy paying $1,000 a golf and not looking for a job, and we just did that. And at that point, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just said, you got to be kidding me.
And in defense of him, why should he be looking for a job?
Well,
If we're paying taxes and giving it to him, why should he be looking for a job?
and that's the funny thing is, they still don't even say, well, I realize, you're working, you're paying. They just think this is money that's, well, it is printed, essentially. But it's got to come from somebody eventually.
Yeah.
It's just like free
Well,
money.
like the lady in Detroit said, Obama's got a stash. He's giving it out.
Yeah,
Where's his stash come from?
yeah.
That's my money
My
and your
pocket,
money.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we hope you do run again.
I intend to. I think I've treated my constituents properly, and I simply ask them to look at my record, look at my individual record. Don't look at the party record, but look at my record. I represent the people in Ward 5. Look at my record.
Well, they can also look at your comments and your website or whatever you have from NashuaGOP.org, because you're listed on their page.
Yes, I am.
Their page, so they can find out more, and they can contact you, or the people can contact us and ask us to get back to you. We'll be happy to do that, Don.
Good.
We look
Very
forward to
good.
bringing you back again.
Are we finished?
Yeah, we're finished.
I can go on for another 2 hours.
Oh, I know that.
Goes like fast, doesn't it?
But I will ask you one thing.
Yes.
I would, sometime or other, like to sit here across the table from your previous guest and debate. Have an open debate.
We've been
You guys can
thinking about
sit
that.
back on the side, just she and I.
Thinking about
I don't
that.
want to mention
Right
any
now, we're
names.
looking for information and getting information out, but we're thinking about putting some debates on. We'd like to have a Democrat on
Well,
here, too, and debate them.
That would be great. I have got a lot of Democratic friends, and that's why I say we have got to work across the aisle, because they have good ideas, too. And we've got to do that.
Okay. Well,
Well,
thank you.
Don, thanks for coming in. And again, another half hour goes by, and thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week. We'll be back with some more guests, and maybe we'll get one of these debates going one of these days.
I'd appreciate that.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot, Don. Take care, everybody.